Sure.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order. I want to welcome everyone to the February 2012 Suffolk County Council on Environmental Quality meeting. I want to remind everyone that this is a public meeting. We do have an agenda to follow for our issues to discuss. If you would like to say any comments about one of these items, please wait until we actually are addressing that item. We'll gladly let you speak. Our first business here, has anyone had the opportunity to look at the November 2011 and January 2012 minutes from our meetings?
January 2012.
January 2012.
Anybody for November?
November.
Okay. Any comments? Do I hear four? No. Any comments about it?
Did you like them in November,
Yes.
the minutes?
They
Were
were
they accurate? Okay. And for the January?
January 2012, I think they're substantially okay, and I would move them.
Okay, so I hear a motion?
A motion to
I'll
accept.
second.
This is for the
Check
January.
for the January. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, how about, do I hear a motion for the November?
Motion for the November minutes.
I would have to abstain because I was only here for part of that
Okay.
meeting.
Would anyone else like a second? Thank you, Larry. Okay, all right. All in favor? Okay, motion passed. Okay, both meetings are accepted. Okay, we do have some correspondence.
Okay.
Well, it was in our packet, not in the packets we got mailed, but the packets on the desk here.
I didn't even see it.
As far as the letter from legislator Kate Browning. And we have notes from the Suffolk County Historic Trust Committee meeting. It's about the Gerard Holman Historic House. Kate Browning's letter.
Do you want to
Just for the historic trust
Yeah,
report.
if people have read the our motion from the other day and Kate Browning's letter, I would appreciate if we could support Kate Browning in her efforts to move this matter forward.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, I'm just curious. I know we've been there. I don't recollect which house this one is. Is this in the center of the district?
It's directly across from the Hawkins-Jacobson house.
That's
on the road.
On the road, it's in the center of the district.
Jim?
Jim?
Yeah, I'd like to reiterate in the letter what the council's done on this, because we reviewed this extensively. And it was original letter to Kate Browning, I guess 3 or 4 years ago, that suggested that the house has to be restored. It's significantly historic, and that, I mean, we should reiterate that and say that, since that time, nothing's been done, and we support Kate Browning's letter.
Well, it's been on top of the list for how long, Richard?
I'd say over a year. The list right now, the priorities have been the mill at Blydenburg, which is substantially complete for the restoration of the building. This was the second priority, the Holman House, and then the Connor Hall Boathouse, and the Miller's House at Blydenburg. So this is, since the survey was completed, I guess this was 2006, this has been a priority, and that's what Jim's referring to, that time period that we all were made aware of this. And then Public Works was concentrating their efforts on the Blydenburg Mill and on Connor Hall Boathouse, and didn't get to this, even though they needed to at that time, and now it's just urgently needed to start this project.
I mean, I would point out that because it takes so much time and these structures become further dilapidated, that they're, there's a chance that they, could just fall through the cracks here. And that, you have to act a little faster on some of these things. This is crazy.
No, this is the 11th hour.
Okay.
This really is. And the money's there.
And how long's the money been there?
It's been there 5 years.
After the CEQ made the recommendation.
Yes. It's going to the concern on the financial side, the funds will sunset this year if they're not, the project's not started.
Well, that should all be added to the letter then.
Well, I believe that's all in Kate Browning's letter. That's why I was thinking if we could just
It's not a bad idea to
Support
support
her.
it. But also, I was at a function in Yaphank during the summertime. It was I think you were there, Rich. Which house?
The opening of the booth house.
Opening of the booth
yeah.
house.
And there have been a number of, it's been county money going into that, and it was also Yaphank historical money going into that. Now, if the county sunk resources into a situation like that, we've got one house, are we going to let the historic district fall apart? That's really the question, or maybe the approach to take. There's been money put in. There's other houses in the area that have been restored that are stabilized to some degree one way or the other. It's really, at this point in time, if the money is there, something to try and push for. I understand about, allocation of resources and, where the time and attention of DPW has to go. But it may be that we have to pull somebody, one of the crews off of one place to try and, patch the dike in another place. I don't know how we might say that in a letter, whether it's a good idea to say that in a letter. But to point out that there have been extensive allocation of funds and resources to that particular district might be something to consider in anything that we do.
I mean, this house goes back to the 1700s, right?
Yeah, 1790.
I mean, how important can it be? I mean, you got to say that this is a historic, important Suffolk County historic resource. Goes back to the 1700s.
It's about one of our oldest houses.
It's one of the county's oldest houses. Recommendations were made. It's time to get the thing done.
And it's in the historic district.
Yeah.
And again, we're out.
And on the National Register and the State Register.
The whole schmear.
And the town of Brookhaven Historic District.
I'm a little bit at a loss. Who do you have to say that to?
Well, it's been said this house has been on a radar from CEQ for 25 years.
Yeah, but who has to do the work?
Well,
DPW.
DPW. But
DPW.
Yeah.
So somebody has to light a fire under DPW.
Yes.
County Exec's office.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's got to come from upstairs
Yes.
or from the legislature.
Yes.
Right.
Is that correct?
That's
the letter
correct.
should go to both.
So that's where
Right.
it should go.
Yeah. Just sort of.
But I do believe that Legislator
CC
Browning.
to DPW.
Right. I think Legislator Browning has stated it very clearly and very succinctly. And I would like to, she's got it all in here. So I'd like to support her.
Right.
But
I'm sorry, DPW has responded to this. I have gotten a response, and I will be meeting with DPW either this week or next week on site, which I've done before, but just to push them again to get this project started.
I agree with Mary Ann that we should support the letter, but again, just outlining our particular reasons for doing this separate from the legislature in that sense, I think might not be a bad idea to gently touch upon it with some of the points that have been brought up here. That's, I think, should be pointed out, is what it boils down to.
I mean, Legislator Browning originally came up with the funding based on CEC's recommendation.
So let's reiterate.
Yeah. I think we should.
Do we have to do a motion on it, or to write a letter?
No, I'll draft the letter. I'll have Richard take a look at it.
And you have the motion from the trust. All right.
Again, it's just, we just can't let certain resources fall apart.
And just to say it again, this is the priority project right now for the historic
A
program.
point of interest is in the beginning when the county started acquiring all the historic properties and the council as the historic trust did the inventory of buildings, and that's when John Klein was the county executive. The council told the county executive and the legislature at that time that if they didn't start to allocate resources to restore the historic resources of the county, they were going to recommend that everything the county owned be turned over to local historic societies so the job could get done. And then all of a sudden, miraculously, things started to develop. The Historic Trust Manual was adopted, and things began to move forward. Richard's office was formed.
That.
And the Historic Society is definitely interested in partnering with us on the restoration of this building. They did a lot to get the booth house to completion, so I'll be explaining that further to DPW. They're very active right now, so they're more than willing to jump in.
Yeah, Kessler wants to move on
Right,
this.
but the condition of the building, they can't get into the building at this point until it's stabilized.
Once, interesting question, where are the problems right now in the building, just out of curiosity?
There's severe framing issues with the timber framing and the foundation. So those things will have to be taken care of first. The only reason the building's standing is the county has kept up, the Parks Department has kept the roof and replaced that. And so that's why the building is
When we
still
were
there.
at the booth house opening, did we walk over there?
You probably did.
Yeah.
That was,
We walked around, yeah.
yeah, 'cause I'm trying to visualize the building. I know we looked at some of the other stuff that was over there. I remember Kessler was there.
Yeah.
I remember, I definitely was walking with you on a few of these things. Just curious.
Okay, so, Mike, you will prepare that letter, which you review it? Okay.
Yeah, and I'll send it around to everyone
Okay.
before it goes out.
Okay, thanks. Okay, moving on. The Historic Trust docket for the Director's Report. Rich, can you give us your?
Sure. Okay, update on the housing. There's really nothing new. All the houses that are able to be rented are rented at this point, and we're looking to get a roof onto one of the houses at the Robinson Duck Farm and try to get that house rented. That roof is supposed to be completed this spring. The custodial agreements that we have in the works, the agreement for the Maritime Museum at West Sayville has been completed by the Parks Department and has been sent out to the Maritime Museum, and they are now reviewing it and will respond with their comments. So that's moving forward. And now I'd like to go over the dedication or listing of the buildings in sight at Oldfield Farm County Park. This was sent out to you in your packet. And to start with, I'd like to clear up a point that Jim Bagg made at last meeting. He was wondering if this had been dedicated already, if possibly in the purchase resolution, Legislator Engelbright might have put this in the Historic Trust. I did go back and research all those earlier resolutions, and I don't see in those earlier resolutions any mention of it. It had gone forward actually in 1994 to the Parks Committee. A resolution was drafted, but it never went out of committee. So after 6 months, they get stricken from the record. So that didn't go approved by the legislature at all. So we're really starting. There was a resolution that was that dedicated the property as parkland that went forward in 1989, but the resolution for dedicating as historic trust never went forward. So that's what we're looking at today. The committee has met twice on site and reviewed the buildings in site, and I'd like to go through it actually building by building relating to the map. If you had time to read through your packet just the basic history, we have the map here to fold out and go number by number so you have a good sense of it, and I'll give a bit of the committee's opinions on each grouping of buildings. What we're looking at is a 13-acre site, and this was developed by Ward Melville in 1931. He filled this wetland in, actually. That's why we have these ongoing water issues and flooding issues, because it was a wetland area. And he developed it as a horse show ground. And this was one of what's now 3 parcels. If you look up to the right of the map, you'll see now a formerly land of Hugh J.B. Cassidy. There's actually a school and a Oldfield club is there. They are out, they're not part of the county holdings, and they were originally part of the grounds though. And then also there's some beachfront property where there's some cabanas. That's part of the club also. And New York State actually in 1995 made an opinion that they thought the whole parcel, all the properties together, were eligible to the National Register. And the Brookhaven town historian Barbara Russell is now working on that nomination with the Oldfield Farm Club and with the Parks Department. So we're doing additional research to bring that forward. But they have done 2 site visits, actually. They came back to take a second look and still recommend it at this point, after their initial visit in 1995. So that, also, when the county acquired the property, we did, in 1996, go into contract with Oldfield Farm Ltd. to restore the site and to run programs there, essentially bringing back the traditional horse shows that they had there. And that has been successful. Both buildings have been restored, not all of them, and the program, I think, is up to 5 or 6 horse shows a year, which is basically the limit that they have in their contract. There's a few covenants that came from the Melville Association with this property that we're working under. They cannot board horses here. They're limited to the number of shows they can have, and also how they maintain and manage the property. This is Sally Lynch, is the president of Oldfield Farm Ltd., and she's followed those guidelines and also her guideline on restoring the buildings. What we're looking at now is to formally either dedicate the property and/or buildings or list them. And again, the committee has reviewed them individually and has given their recommendations. Yes?
Why don't they permit boarding?
I guess,
I mean, that's just a silly question.
yes. Nick, do you have thoughts on that? No? I think it's both for the limiting the activities there and also limiting, like, the horse manure and other.
Well,
That has to be removed from the site.
Case in point, I look at 2 places, West Hills
Yes,
Park
right.
and Comsett State Park.
Yes,
They both have stables, they both have horse shows, and they both do boarding.
yes.
And that
Most-
brings in a nice piece of change to help keep the place.
Most places do. I think the covenants were put on here both for the environmental concerns of how much activity you wanted to have essentially in a wetlands environment, and also the community that surrounds it had concerns of
Public use.
public use.
There-
of that property.
Larry?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct about, there was just concern about overuse. I had a couple things about, if you're going to be talking to town of Brookhaven, I think about dedicating the Oldfield Club and that school.
Well, that would be their decision.
Right.
We're just working together on the historic research.
Okay, one of the things I think you ought to bring to their attention is that there are real problems at the Oldfield Club with leaching from their cesspool into the West Meadow Creek. And also, if I recall, there's an illegal discharge from the school into the pond. And I just think before anybody designates something historic, at least those things ought to be looked at and cleaned up. The other thing that I had a question on was, are the buildings that you're designating for the Suffolk County subject to flooding?
I'll say yes.
And before we designate it, and what's going to be done to prevent that from happening?
I don't think really there's any way, and Nick maybe can comment further on it, that there's any way to prevent overall flooding to the site.
They've been subject to flooding for 80 years.
Right.
Nothing's changed in that regard.
I realize that, and I was just wondering, are we buying into...
There's no change of the maintenance of the property that we, meaning Parks, would be looking to do with this dedication, just to maintain it as is. The only possibility of a change could be there is an apartment on site now. That use might not be able to continue. Sally Lynch has proposed different ideas of elevating the building or possibly moving it or whatever. That is a constant problem, but that type of use might have to stop. It just might not be able to be accommodated at this site.
I think it's great you're going to preserve it.
In terms of the flood hazard regs, that applies to all new stuff.
Yeah, not to old
It doesn't
stuff.
apply to things that are existing.
Well, I wasn't thinking of it in the context of regulation. I was just thinking of it in more in what are we buying into with long-term
Right.
maintenance
Yeah.
if it's,
Right.
Constantly repairing it after it's
Yeah.
flood damaged.
And
Big
I'll
expense.
say,
are the resources there?
Yeah.
I'll say the flood damage that we've had, these are stables, the grandstand, under the grandstand might get flooded. We have not had any significant, damage from the flooding. It's basically the apartment that, the floors flood and clothing and, person's belongings
Possessions.
get wet. So, but that was really an old stable building that had been converted to an apartment. And so if it was remained as a stable building, you would just have a dirt floor and it would have drained and that would have been it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was around when this was purchased, and I'm aware of some of the controversies that came up in some of the political deal making that went on. This was a controversial project, just to have the county purchase it a long time ago, as one or two members may remember. Is Sally right now able to make this a viable business? I mean, or is she breaking even? I mean, there's a lot of, what it boils down to is there are a lot of restrictions on this property. And if we're going to be dedicating it into the Historic Trust, and she's subject to a lot of these restrictions, and we're also at the same time asking her to do a lot of restoration, is she financially, at this point in time, given those restrictions, able to make a go of this?
I'll say yes to that. And also, with those concerns in mind, the Parks Department has changed their contract from a concessionaire contract to a custodial agreement. So we're really viewing it as an historic site. The Old Field Farm Ltd. is a non-profit group, so that's fine. And CQ has approved that. That agreement's being worked on now. But we're still operating under that those new guidelines. So with that change, in a sense, before she was required to be the primary person to restore the site, but now it's truly will be a partnership as we have at our other sites, where the county will be bringing in materials to help with the restoration.
Do you think there's any chance of opening up some of those contract restrictions now that it's been in place now 20 years without giant controversy, opening it up so that there may be a few more horse shows over there? This is a jewel of an area. And
It's like a legal opinion that would have to
No, I'm not
look at
talking
the
legal.
covenants to
I'm not-
make a decision.
I'm not talking
So I couldn't
legal.
Speak to that.
But have you, as a community, to your knowledge, been complaining about the use as it exists right now?
What I hear from Sally is when she has the shows, just the loudspeakers and things, she'll get some comments on. So there is still a concern, I think, of this activity in the community because of those.
Have you ever heard of anything, Larry? Down there?
Not recently, but they fussed because they were putting canoes in on the property.
Yeah, well, that was Gloria.
Yeah, so
Not our Gloria.
And I think Gloria still has lots of concerns, and of course, with the town park being there now, the pollution issues I think would be just compounded from what they were originally.
It's just, I have always thought that the restrictions that were placed on this were very onerous. And I understand why. Just to let the council know, this is Larry and my home waters, if you will. We both know this area very, very well. We've both been involved with West Meadow Creek and its studies and how to keep it open and dredging in the area and things like that. So we are intimately aware of what goes on. But again, I've always thought that a lot of the conditions were onerous, and I was wondering, if they could be opened up a little bit. We have, for example, in my home village, we have a property, a horse show property, and we don't have these kinds of major restrictions on shows or anything like that. And it makes for a more viable operation. What it boils down to is if we're dedicating this and we want to keep this up, and we drive out a concessionaire, okay, because they're not able to make money, what happens? That's what I'm looking at.
Marion.
My sense of this, Michael, is that this woman, bear in mind that the contract has just changed in her favor. Up until this point, the county has not helped her at all. And she has made a go of it. She's very impressive, and what she's done to this site is very impressive. And it's ongoing. I'm not certain that you want to loosen any of the restrictions here. She's operating under these restrictions, and furthermore, and up until this point, she's done the restoration on her own with no help from the county at all. So this is a labor of love. It's not like she makes a lot of money, but it really is an impressive site. As is.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm just worried about losing her. Is really what I'm. With the recession that we've had, and I know other properties have had problems.
This is a limited property from not only from the environmental standpoint, but there isn't a lot of land here, Michael.
Yep.
You can't. Parking is a problem. I just don't see how she could expand on site.
Well, it's not so
and
much.
She's not asking to.
I know, but I think she's limited to 4 shows a year or something.
I think it's 6.
It's 6,
okay.
and I don't think she's complaining.
She's happy that she's gotten top tier shows. You know, that was her concern.
Right.
To get the good shows to this site or bring them back to this site, which she has accomplished that goal. But like Marion said, there's a lot of restrictions. And even the flooding is something she has to plan around.
I know.
I mean, even the timing of the shows, you can't expect to have it in early spring when the property's still draining from the winter, and you have to try to push them until late summer when the place is dried up. And she knows that now.
Yeah.
You know, that's not going to change. You know.
Mike, I just want to make a distinction between the covenant and deed restrictions that came with the property as opposed to the restrictions imposed further by the county.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the agreement. I don't know it intimately like
No,
Rich would.
There are deed restrictions in there.
There are, and I want to call something that Larry had touched on. There is a covenant on the property that prohibits water access into West Meadow Creek, and we've been through that before here.
Yeah,
Whether or not you agree with that or not is
well, the water
I won't
access
say irrelevant, but it came with the property. So those are what I would consider hard and fast, as opposed to some of the other things that were incorporated later into the agreement with Sally, and that have now been revisited with the custodial agreement. So I think it's important to show that some of them came with the property and are kind of in an as-is condition, and others are subject to further review
I
by
am
the county.
well aware of those restrictions.
Well, we're kind of mixing up. I think the discussion is going back and forth between some are more...
Realistically, what I'm driving at is
inflexible than
6
others.
shows are maybe inadequate to certain degrees.
I'm not
given
sure
the economy.
specifically if that is a covenant or deed restriction on the property, thou shalt not have more than 6 shows, rather than the county's interpretation
No,
of the restriction.
it's in, as far as I know, it's in the deed restriction.
Now, the boarding is.
Right.
Is,
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was hoping you'd be able to enumerate the ones that were the county imposed as opposed to covenant and came with the property, but you're saying you...
I only know the ones that affect my part of this
Right, the county-
site, which are the water access issues. So those I know, but
And
in
the
terms of
environmental aspects of the cleanup, those weren't specified in the covenants in the sense of removing the manure
Oh,
off the
yeah.
site. Those
Right.
were all put into her agreement by the county.
But in terms of the specificity of number of shows, what have you, that I wouldn't know.
Yeah, that is-
Ability to board was part of, came with the property?
Yes,
Yeah,
those
that
are
was
in
a
the
deed
covenants.
restriction.
Those are definitely in the covenants. There's no reason that parks would have any reason to give those restrictions.
And
Really.
I know this isn't important now, but I just, how did we, all the discussions that I hear at the legislature about, you know, when we buy county property, it needed to be available for county use. I don't know how we went ahead and bought that, given all those restrictions. I mean, I know it's a
They
story.
were before.
But
They were before those restrictions came in.
Well, yes, you're right. With every new acquisition, we're always pushing for and championing more public access to these properties, yes. But this is not the only example of properties that came with very specific restrictions in terms of future use.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I do still want to go
Through
through
each building, okay.
each building. So the discussion we just had obviously covers the property concerns, the historic background to the properties. We do have the original 13 acres that was part of the showground. The separate parcels still exist, and they're as the buildings, the uses change. The school is now used as an apartment house and is privately owned. But again, that's not our purview here. But
just 1 minute, Richard. You're saying that school that's up in this top right corner on the map?
yes, it
But
was
now, what was
originally
Larry?
part of the parcel historically, but the county only owns the horse show ground.
We didn't purchase.
No, I know that, but Larry, you said that school there has a illegal discharge.
I believe it has an illegal discharge, and I was just thinking before the town of Brookhaven,
Yeah.
since he's going to have talks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll
They ought
just
to
bring it
explore-
forward. I will be meeting with the town because we're going to, the state, when it looks at a National Register nomination, they want the full story. Their committee could make changes, but they want the full history, and so they've asked for the whole original parcel we
thanks.
presented to them.
I thought that you said it was already dedicated. It's on the National Register?
No. It's just been declared eligible.
Oh, well.
Eligible.
Just eligible. Okay, so
Has it been nominated, or is it eligible?
Just eligible.
So it's not nominated?
No.
no. Eligibility is simply a letter stating the fact that you can go ahead to work on the nomination, that the office is supporting that.
That's an important distinction.
Oh, yeah.
Right, right.
But it is good to have, because being declared eligible already allows you to apply for state grants, even being eligible. So that's good that you have that classification. And that's, of course, the plus, if this does get on the National and State Register, that Sally also, of course, can apply for grants for the site.
It just seems to me that it's a lovely looking place. There are nice buildings there that can be restored. But if there was a way to generate funds or resources to restore them from the site, it ought to happen.
Yeah, well, there's other activities that Sally's brought into the site besides the horse shows. She has, in the past, had antique shows there. She has movie nights. There could be other activities that she could bring on site that's separate, in a sense, from the horse show activities for fundraising. And also, as we go through the buildings, I'll explain a bit. Like Marianne said, she's done the restoration herself, and she has applied for grants. She's has corporate sponsors that come in that donate materials and labor. And so I'll just go right into the first four to explain. These are the, when you come in the gate, that's the main gate here to your left. The beach, the town beach, is directly opposite this gate. And these are the four buildings that you see when you drive into your left. And on your map, this would be identified 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see them right there. And these buildings, just so you know, were in the same condition as 5, 6, 7, 8, which you'll see on the next picture. They were leaning, tilting to the wind. The roofs were in poor shape. The framing was in poor shape. She did bring carpenters in, engineers that helped her to straighten the buildings out. She's brought in even Boy Scouts that have painted, put the new roofs on. So these four buildings were done with her efforts, and again, corporate sponsorships and local community organizations. Okay, so these four, in this condition, just so you know that the committee, again, went on site twice, because they had a lot of questions on this nomination, and they have decided to dedicate these four, because they are in their original condition, original location, and they're standing, which at this site is very important part of the review. Okay, the next building should be 3, 4. Wait a minute.
2, 4, 6, and 8.
2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, well, that's because you're seeing the. You're also seeing the ones at the entrance. But the point, you can go to the next picture. Actually, is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's the next grouping of buildings that are in poor shape or original condition. And this was a real debate and discussion in the committee, and also with Sally Lynch. As going forward, she was questioning whether she would be required to restore these buildings or not. Again, under the custodial agreement, the county now can provide her materials and labor to support her. And the committee thought as a group that this row of buildings here was very significant and important to the original scheme and design of this showground. So they, while they aware of the conditions, they didn't want to say goodbye to these buildings. So they didn't think it right to dedicate buildings in this condition, but they agreed to list them. And so this is our newer category where we consider these contributing to the history of the site. We are asking the Parks Department essentially to look to restore these buildings, but if they can't, that they could come back to the CQ for a review to either alter the buildings or to possibly take them down.
What are the liability issues as they stand?
Good point. We should actually have fencing around these because of that concern, and I could work to do that. We haven't had any problems, but that's what should be done. So that's their recommendation for this grouping. The next building you see is just a close-up of number 9 that is on the right side of the former picture, just again showing the condition here. This building obviously is in poor shape, but the committee didn't want to just let it go.
What kind of fencing? I don't want to see yellow tape or anything.
No, the basics for something like this would just be snow fencing I would put up with the metal stakes.
That won't look too bad then.
Right. For a site like this, it would be okay. Okay, the next picture is, this is what's happening over there. The roof section in front, this was one stable building. The apartment was incorporated at one end of it and has been fully restored. That's the building that's flood. The other part of the building has collapsed. Actually, during the time of our review, this occurred.
You were there?
Yes, so no matter what decisions we make, God might make his own, and these things can still happen. So, but the committee with this building only decided to dedicate the apartment building because that's been restored. And since we've met, this whole roof structure has been carted away. Okay, so that we're not considering at all. And just in this view, you can see a long view here. This looks towards the ring, and the grandstand will be on your right if you haven't been on this site. And all the fencing is new and replaced in kind for what was there originally. The next building, ticket booth number 11. Again, you can see some issues, needs a new roof, but it is structurally okay. So the committee decided to dedicate this structure. The next picture is a view of the grandstand. Again, Sally Lynch replaced the roof on this building and has restored it. It's in good shape. This is actively used for all the horse shows, and the committee decided to dedicate this structure.
I think, Rich, if I recall correctly, either she or the county also went to the effort to make the grounds acceptable for the horses. It deteriorated, so there was quite an expense invested in, in that.
Yeah. And that's a good point for the next picture of the lead-in to it. Gave my introduction. The main ring, number 13, because of that expense, there's a whole new footing there. If you're just looking at it, you might not realize this, but this has a whole, like a rock base to it, so it drains properly. And this has been very helpful to attract the top-tier horse shows. And so it's a professionally laid ring that actually the county did pay for that. And that allowed her to get the horse shows back. She was having trouble until that was done. So because of that effort, and also include the fencing surrounding it, which is the original configuration, the committee wanted that to be recognized in the future, so they dedicated the main ring itself. That's number 13.
Larry, I just want to add for your benefit, a lot of the drainage had was conveyed out of that area originally by Orangeburg, whatever, just into the creek.
Right.
And that was all severed when we did that project,
Yeah.
which we brought to you for review, I guess maybe 10 years ago or so since we
Right.
did that.
And a number of the members of the committee went down and
That's right.
looked
With the site.
over that
Yeah.
when you were doing it. Yeah.
You want anything else about drainage or anything?
No, just that at the time, and it's held up, we've been very happy with the results of it. And it was pretty state-of-the-art at the time, but it was all an improvement to what had been there.
And this was actually a partnership. The county paid for the contractor to put the ring in, but Sally paid for the design costs. And she hired a very good designer that had actually designed Olympic horse show grounds. So it's really the best.
I had insert something at this juncture. Between 11 and 13, there are 2 open areas. They don't have numbers, but those are also grounds that she has restored on her own and brought into the complex.
Yeah, Sally maintains the property, mows the lawn, takes care of everything. So she's really very self-sufficient. The next building is the secretary building. Again, I think that's a newer roof on this building and has been maintained. So the committee decided to dedicate this structure. And it's part of the main ring, but we did single it out to be dedicated on its own.
So, am I to understand then that you're dedicating individual structures rather than the whole site?
Yes.
Both.
Well, both. What we're asking you to review is to
Yes.
dedicate the 13-acre property to the Historic Trust, which would include the grounds, the fencing, the
Buildings
roadways,
and everything.
and the
No.
buildings we're dedicating separately,
Individually.
and so you'll be dedicating the ground under the buildings separately, and then the buildings individually.
Why?
Because the
Because of the
listing,
condition.
because of the conditions, we do have this, which I think is very helpful, the listing where you can single out certain buildings that you do not want to create as county landmarks. Once you make it a landmark property, you are requiring the county to restore it. You're demanding that the county restore it by putting that.
So by dedicating the property, you're not...
You're telling the county you want to maintain this as an historic site, as a horse show grounds, as it was historically, and not look to change the use extremely, to something else.
And basically, you're dedicating the existing buildings that are still intact,
Yes.
putting them in. But for example, caretaker apartment number 10, where you've got the flattened structure, you're just nominating that.
That's not even
That's not
included.
even
Not even,
included.
okay.
Yeah, because it's totally collapsed. That's not even identified here.
I mean, you might explain, Rich, that, as the committee went along, certain structures can be dedicated that are worthwhile maintaining, but other structures could be in such a condition they don't want to list them, because if they do fall down, what do you have to then go back to the legislature and undedicate them? In order to
it's not that
remove them?
easy.
So
It's not that
they're
easy.
listing them as being historically important, but they're not dedicated as such. So if
Explain.
they're going to disrepair and fall down, the parks could go in and remove them.
Right, and just to clarify, Jim's referring to, as far as I understand it, Jim, just the CQ has to review that. The listing buildings do not go to the legislature.
That's correct.
They just come here, and that we, meaning parks, would just come to the CQ with our plans for that structure.
But explain how you remove something that's dedicated to the
Then
Historic
it's
Trust
a referendum,
statewide.
Then that's like
a big deal.
That's like identifying the original dedicating as parkland. It's the same guidelines as parkland.
But didn't
With
we
the
have
state.
some
Alienation.
properties that we knocked?
Like an alienation.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
What happened to Cathedral Pines, though? If you remember Cathedral Pines, 1 or 2 of the barns came down.
Yes.
And they were basically on the ground, as I remember. I remember seeing them. What happened with that? Did they get rebuilt, or they got...
They haven't been rebuilt, and actually the committee, I'll be bringing that forward shortly. That resolution that dedicated the property does not identify any structures at all, only the property. So the committee has taken a site visit there. Actually, we made two visits to that site also to review those structures for what they want to recommend to be dedicated or listed.
And it will be very similar to this application. There will be some things that will be recommended for dedication and others that will be recommended for listing.
And I also want to bring up at this point, we are following essentially what the National Register guidelines are. When you nominate a property, you also put like what buildings are non-conforming or what don't fit into the historic time period. So every building is identified, and some do not get put on the National Register. Just because they're on the property, that doesn't mean they get put on the National Register.
So the committee decided to dedicate the apartment building,
Yes.
which you've said floods.
Yes.
So how does that increase the county, or did you already go over this, the county's liability to?
No, it's a good point because she's suggested already to raise that building. I don't know if that's possible to raise it up, or if we want to do that. And I don't know. It's maybe could be moved, and that's a good point because if it's dedicated, ideally you don't want to move an historic building. So that's, I think, a good point to raise whether that should be dedicated or not, and because otherwise, if we might then require her to leave it in that location and maybe find an alternative use.
Can we dedicate it with the caveat that it may be raised up or moved, or we
I
can't
think
do that?
No, but we could list it.
Listen.
But
We
you
could
have
list it.
that.
I mean, I
Those
think-
right. That's why you have the listing.
That's why you have the listing,
And
and maybe we should list it.
And the flooding issue, did not get discussed in the committee. They were looking at conditions of the structure itself.
Right.
So that's why, you can change or agree with what their recommendations are.
Right, the committee was primarily looking at the architectural elements on this site and the whole setting. In other words, one of the reasons we are asking to list some of these collapsing structures is that Sally wants to take them all down, all right? But they provide the visual context for this site. And that's why we are listing them, hoping that the county and Sally together will continue to restore them. When you go on site, the architectural buildings give you the sense of the horseshoe ground. So that was the focus of the committee, not the environmental or the wetlands.
Do we have flood maps that talk about, are there areas that are higher ground that this could be moved to here, or does the whole thing kind of?
With the extreme, high tides, I think the whole thing floods.
I would suspect it was underwater 2 times since in the last 6 months.
Right.
The hurricane, and then in January we got within about 6 inches of the same elevation of storm surge.
Right.
So I would suspect that it'll probably flood 3 to 4, 5 times a year.
The good thing, though, is it's not destructive floods in terms of a surge or anything like that, in terms of wave action or anything like that. The way Larry's studies
Just
and
rises.
yeah, it basically just sort of rises up and just sort of stays there. It's not it goes up and down. It doesn't come crashing in, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but I don't know why you just couldn't lift it and put it on even cinder block.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not
it's
difficult.
definitely possible. Yeah.
I don't think there's the way they're describing it. I don't think there's a restriction against that.
No. It's just how and who does it.
I would say that basically what Rich and Marianne are describing is a viable way of going on all of this. They've obviously put a lot of thought into it.
I haven't finished.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, but so far,
Okay.
let me hit my point. In terms of the water, that's where I was going. I don't think that it's going to hurt in terms of the flooding issues going with what they've established so far. I just don't see the flooding as being a detriment or a preventive measure.
Yeah, oh, it's a good point. It's a major issue there that she has to deal with all the time. Okay, the next photo is building number 15 and 16, and this, the drive is right in front of it, so when you're driving in, these would be your buildings to the right. This is showing the main U-shaped barn, which was, we do have the original plans by Richard Haviland Smith, who also was Ward Melville's architect for the Crescent in town in Stony Brook. Smythe, sorry. So that kind of is a little higher level of interest of a building on the site compared to the stable buildings. And that is in good repair. She has kept up the roof. It's having some problems now, so we're actually looking to re-roof it at this point. She has a $22,000 grant to provide for that, and we're also going to help her out with materials now. But essentially it's in good shape. And the long stable building to the left, again, is in basic good shape. So because of that, the importance actually for the site, for the design of the site and the conditions, the committee decided to dedicate both these buildings.
Rich, you just want to touch on how now we can provide.
I did, actually. Okay, the next picture is showing, this is the U-shaped barn is in the background, and it's showing a row of 4, well actually it's 3.
Yeah, 3.
Right. 3 structures, and the conditions here are poor. And her plans for the site, Marianne mentioned already, she doesn't have enough parking. And what happens actually now for the horse shows, besides just the regular vehicle parking to attend the shows, you really have the trailers that bring the horses in. And they, because of the maintenance of the horses, they actually like to keep them on the trailers. So that's why the stables, we're going to have to find a lot of adaptive reuse for them for storage or other alternative uses, because they might not be able to be used for the horses themselves.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. That the stables, even the ones she's restored and in the Smythe's Horseshoe, are not considered large enough by current standards for a horse.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so that she uses very few of the stables in that horseshoe, and in those, in 1, 2, 3, and 4 where she has restored them, they're not for stable use. I mean, people bring their own stables, their own horse trailers to the site. But that doesn't preclude, as Richard just pointed out, a lot of other adaptive reuses of these structures. He's going to tell you that the buildings 15, 17, and 18, right, 17, 18, 19, are not visible. When I was talking about the visual context, you have to drive around to see those. And so in terms of priorities, we would much prefer that she restore 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, 17, 18, and 19. If something has to go, those would be the structures that, and one of them went. They're on their way out.
So, with that said, the committee looked at these structures. They did, the first one, 17, pretty sure,
right,
was decided to list that one.
Right, that was it, yes.
They thought they liked the fact that that was still standing. The other 2 are in poorer condition, and with her plan, her idea of using this for parking and the conditions, they are not recommending any historic designation for those 2 at all.
So where is the parking going to be?
Basically, we're saying that this is 16, 17, 18.
Okay.
All right. Let her take those out and park things in here. Okay.
I think that's a really important notion, because parking here is a disaster. And when you do something in the summer, and with the Brookhaven Town Beach being across the street, if the county ever wanted to make money, all they had to do was go there and give tickets for parking. So it's really important, I think, that you provide some parking for
But
activities.
it's to allow her to remain, for the use to remain viable.
Right.
Right. She needs the parking for the trailers. And so even this field, there is the traditional fence across the front of it, but in her discussions on site, we would probably look to add 2 gates to provide a one-way drive into the site, and then by removing 18 and 19, give her more space, and possibly even 17.
So these are only for the horse show people that are bringing horses. This is parking for them.
Well,
Yes,
it's
basically, yes.
basically that's her need.
Basically, that's her need.
That's her primary need right
But
now.
what are you going to do about the people that come just for the day to park? Because that is a real problem.
Well, they don't use that.
They don't use
There
that.
is no daily parking on site.
But if I go over there
Right.
to see one of their horse shows, I got to
You
be
have to
able to
park
park.
here. You park here.
In
Where's
the public
that?
lot where the
Right
beach is?
here.
I'm not. I
No,
can't.
park.
You can't.
So where do you park?
recommendation that's secret.
I'm not a town
Here?
resident.
Right. I think the
Right here.
parking, the main parking is provided up
Up here.
top. There is an
Right.
entrance there.
There's an entrance here.
But that's where the horse trailers go also. If
Yeah.
you displace them, suddenly you open up parking.
Yeah.
You got to provide parking for non-Brookhaven town
Yeah.
residents.
No,
Well,
you
the
do.
parking up top, Mike mentioned, now does have a lot of trailer parking up there. That could be moved down to this location and open up more parking there. And depending on the space provided, you might be able to also have visitor parking here.
Here.
So I think you ought to make that a provision that in order to attract people to come to her operations where they're paying, you got to provide a little more public parking.
Okay. Is there a motion to dedicate and
I'll-
list the
I'll make the
properties
motion.
as stated?
I will make the motion to dedicate this property to the Historic Trust and adopt the recommendations that the Historic Trust Subcommittee has recommended to us, and with the proviso of the changes that we've discussed here today.
Okay, are there any other discussions, Mary Ann?
Could we revisit the apartment?
Yes.
We have dedicated it, the caretaker's apartment, but after this morning's discussions, I think it might be better if we list it.
I would like, that's my opinion, I would like
All
to
right,
see
so
that
that
listed
would be
because
the
of
one
flooding.
change I would like to make, is that the caretaker's apartment be listed rather than dedicated, which gives Richard more flexibility, and Sally, actually.
Yeah,
Does
as-
their
as amended
plan
fine.
for parking have to come back to us?
Yes.
Everything will have
Because the property.
Everything has
Because I
to
think
come
Oh,
that
yeah. And once you
Larry
dedicate,
makes a good point. That public parking, there may be an opportunity for the county to open up a public parking that's closer to the beach.
Yeah. It's
And I'm not talking about the 5 times a year when there's a horse show. I'm talking about other times when we may need additional parking for the beach area, that it may serve as another use. And if it's, you know, it's in a good location for that purpose. And so I'd like to know more about how that's going to be, who's going to be planning out parking
would be
areas. And
like plan between Sally and Parks Department, and then we would come back to the CQ for review of that design of the parking area, as we have in the past for the ring and the fencing. We did come to the CQ.
You'd have to look at the original covenants and things like that, because
Yeah.
I think there are some restrictions in there. All right, as amended, that's my motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
It's a type 2 action?
Well, I want to say, is there a
Well-
motion to do a secret dedication for type of action and
Well-
declaration?
It's on the type 2 list, dedications.
Yeah, I know, but this is actually, and this is, I've said this before, sometimes we have to vote this twice. Once it's the Historic Trust to dedicate, and then once it's CEQ to do a type 2.
Well, you got to complete secret first.
Okay, so,
All right, so
all right,
this-
so seeker at CEQ, Reso, type 2, which obviously means
Well,
negative declaration.
Yeah, in the past, what they've done is they've made a motion to make it a type 2 action, and then they made the motion for dedication in the same reso.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
I don't care. However it works out.
The way Jim says, I'll second it.
All in favor? Okay. Motion and the dedication to secret passing.
That's beautiful.
And just point out, if you look at the old maps before this was changed, this was the headwaters of what is West Meadow Creek. And this was all marsh, probably with many freshwater streams are bubbling up right in this area. And it's really fascinating how Ward Melville changed it. And then in the creek, because originally he was going to have a marina there, dug a very deep hole. It's the deepest place in West Meadow Creek. It goes down to about 19 feet, and it gets anoxic every summer. So this really altered
The total dead zone.
Yeah.
Nothing moves in around.
Like today, the DEC would almost let them do it, right?
Yeah, right.
Can I just confirm that the only change to the committee's list was the listing of the apartment?
Yes.
That was the only change,
Yeah.
right?
Number
Okay.
10.
Yep.
Okay, Rich, do you have anything for the County Historic Trust to discuss?
Just to state that the Carnival Boathouse restoration project has been put on hold and shut down at this point, and we're going to be awaiting an additional engineer study to give us recommendations on how to proceed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on, recommended type 2 actions.
I think that
Ratification of recommendations for legislative resolutions laid on the table for February 7th, 2011.
I'll make a motion to approve those.
Can I just...
Except for 1176, as long as he proves he's not the guy involved.
It's not me, I swear. I do just want to point out that at the request of Legislator Hahn at our last meeting, I did put a little asterisk next to the recommendations where they don't jive with what's in the resolution itself. But other than that, nothing really outstanding to point out.
Yeah, what doesn't jive? Like, I mean,
The references to the type 2s, the references to the SECRA classification in the legislation itself.
So it's a-
Sometimes they put in an extra one that doesn't apply, or they call it a type 2 when it's an unlisted. So when our recommendations differ from what's in the resolution, I put a little asterisk.
So we're right and they're wrong.
And so,
For the most part.
So should we request that they get amended?
That's the prerogative of the legislature. When I present these at EPA,
This is the fight we have.
this
with Nolan all the
is,
time.
you know, that's the routine. We present our recommendations, and then the legislature either accepts them, which they do. They vote on it, and typically they accept our recommendations. It just never makes that leap to
And then
the
they pass
amended
the
resolutions.
resolution, yeah.
Right.
And which one is? You can actually break most of the resos around here because of that error.
What is it, the department head that comes up with a recommendation that's not correct?
It's Nolan.
Whoever produces these resolutions, it could be a department head that, you know, gets funneled through the county exec's office. It could be counsel to the legislature. It could be a particular legislator themselves. It all depends on the resolution.
I mean, what the people don't understand that type 2 actions, they pull everything that was done previously and throw it in there, not realizing there's 35 things in the type 2 list, and some of them directly apply and others don't. You just, one size doesn't fit all here.
Right. Well, that's the trouble with SECRA. We all know that, but you know, after working with it for 30 years, but nevertheless, it seems to me that if the county attorney's office, the legislators, and the planning department are not working together in producing these resolutions, then there's an awful lot of wasted time and effort until you get to the end point.
That's true. I've had discussions with Nolan in the past.
I don't know who Nolan is.
George Nolan is the counsel of the Ledge. to try, because I notice these things that, it's one way or the other way. They frequently get them wrong, and we bring them up, and it just
Michael, when I
just doesn't always move.
Well, you say they get it wrong. They're the attorneys. They're the ones that have to defend the legislature when they make a decision.
But-
You don't go to court. He has to go to
I know.
court. Or his people have to go to court to defend.
Okay, but Mike, how does this relate to as far as the CEQ as an advisory board, and we advise that it be this type? We've given our declaration. We are an advisory board.
Right, correct.
So they don't have to take our advice and
No,
throw it
they
out the
don't.
window if they want.
That's true.
So based on that fact alone and what our role is as an advisory board, is there something we need to do to address this, that these changes happen like that? Or that's what I'm trying to understand.
We could have a more open dialogue, I guess.
Yeah, I was going to have Michael come and meet with George, and we'll show him all the...
Maybe the three of us can sit down, me, you, and
Okay.
George.
The
All right, so we,
other problem is when they adopt these regs and they vote them at the ledge, suddenly you have conflicting, if you will, seeker determinations.
Yeah.
Well,
and if anybody's really smart, you
then-
can drive a truck through it.
Did they actually vote and accept these? At the committee, they accept our recommendations, but they're not voting on those.
But at the full ledge, there are often, these things do get voted.
Our individual secret recommendations.
When they're voting on the individual bills. Okay, if they've adopted them at the committee level, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there is housekeeping done. That's what they call it, is housekeeping, wherein they it's called reconciliation, actually. And I've seen it happen at the ledge where they do all of this stuff and they actually vote on these things. So when you have that, okay, again, you've got conflicting. This is why I often say, hey, another bill has been made, there's another mistake, they'll do, and you and I have discussed this, where they will make a conclusion before they do the planning. And it's always backwards. They always, and I always complain about it, they have to do it a different way. First you do planning and then you make your determination. It's a minor technical point. It's like when I always say we should vote as Historic Trust and then CEQ, but we do a combined reso.
We'll meet with George and we'll try to...
Sure.
You got to...
okay.
I mean, in the past, I used to call the originator of the bill up and just let them know that the type 2 was incorrect and it should be changed, and they just automatically did it.
Okay.
Maybe that's what you need to do.
I mean, they're
There's
very...
a lot of them.
There's a lot of them, yeah.
It's like they're all wrong.
But
Almost.
Maybe somebody new. Maybe somebody new over there.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is.
Okay, well,
It's a
All right, so
continuous
Mike-
Well, I'll work
educational
with legislator
process.
Hunt on
those
that.
can be
All right,
It's a continual educational process.
all right. So, do we have a motion to,
Yeah.
you said it already, right? We lost track of such a conversation. Anybody to second it? Seconded by Rich. All in favor? Motion passed. Okay, recommended unlisted actions. Proposed construction of a seawall, County Road 77, Westlake Drive, Montauk, Town of East Hampton. Who do we have to speak today? Hi. State your name, please.
Ben Ripnex.
I'm sorry, say it again.
Ben Ripnex.
Thank you. Okay.
Good morning. I'd like to start by thanking the council for its attention to this matter. My name is Ben Ripnex, and I'm a junior civil engineer with the Suffolk County Department of Public Works Highway Design Division, and I'll be presenting for the construction of a seawall on County Road 77, Westlake Drive, located in Montauk, in the town of East Hampton. Beginning with slides 2 and 3, we can see the project location on County Road 77, facing Block Island Sound. In the winter of 2010-2011, the area was subjected to intense and severe weather, which left the beach area devastated. Slide 4 shows how the existing dunes were washed out. The area underneath the road began to erode and undermine the existing roadway, leading to potential collapse. An emergency repair was ordered, which is shown in slide 5. The temporary stabilization was used with man-made dunes held in place with riprap. To adequately address the erosion problem and prevent the collapse of the roadway, the best solution is to install a seawall. The seawall will consist of steel sheet piling with a concrete cap. Larger riprap, along with planting of beach grass, will be placed to further stabilize the wall and prevent erosion. Looking at slide 8, we can see a cross-section of the proposed seawall. And slide 9 shows an example of the steel sheet piling and how the wall will be installed.
How far down is the sheet piling going?
The sheet piling will be 35 feet, and it'll go down to an elevation of -0.6.
Question for you. I've dealt with bulkheads very extensively. So I'm going to, if the chair doesn't mind, I have a bunch of questions because I'm not sure what's going on here. Which way are the currents flowing over here?
Current?
Yeah. Is it east to west, west to east?
I'm not sure the way the currents are flowing. I would say based on the beach erosion that it is flowing from west to east.
It looks like I have one of the aerials here where there's a sand buildup at the groin at Montauk Inlet. So I suspect you're probably right. Not 100% sure. I would have liked to have known that. Next, Montauk has had a grounding problem, and there's talk about getting federal funds out there to do some dredging over there.
I think the Army Corps of Engineers is currently dredging on the east side of the canal.
So how far away from the project is...
From the project?
I mean, because I'm looking at the maps, and the east side of the... actually, the current looks like it goes west to, from west to east. No, I'm sorry.
No, it goes
the other way.
the other way.
West to east.
If you look at the topo, the accretion is on the east side of the jetty, which means that's a prevailing current drift. So your downdrift side is eroding, and that's why it's been subjected to storms.
Yeah, the aerial suddenly shows it is east to west over here, so you got the shadow. So what you're saying is they're pumping, which way are they pumping sand, or going to be pumping sand?
They're going to be dredging the inlet, and they're going to be putting it on the east side of the canal.
On the east side. They're not going to put it on the west side.
I'm not sure if they're putting
Is there any way to grab any of that sand? And, because it'd be less capital intensive. And, frankly, I'm not 100% sure that a seawall is necessarily warranted here. This seems to be, well, let me ask you the question before I make a conclusion. Have you had erosion problems here before?
Until the storm damage in 2010-2011, I was not aware of any damage before.
That's also, to my knowledge, to be true. Basically, you got hit by one or two storms, and you've got this gouge coming up to essentially a public facility, being the parking lot.
Well, the parking lot is owned by the town of East Hampton.
It's a public facility.
Mike, I do believe, just as a point of clarification, the county park is to the east of the inlet here. I'm not aware of any nourishment coming up over to our side, so I believe they're doing a sand bypass.
Yeah, they're hoping
to the west.
Yeah, because there is a shadowing over there, and I get that, but there's less accretion of sand in that area. And I am looking at the pictures. I'm just, wondering whether it's worth it or not to put in, such an expenditure to protect a parking lot. If it was a lot of buildings over there, that'd be one thing. And maybe that's outside of our purview, looking at the capital costs. But, it seems like, in that sense, a single storm event where you've got some erosion, whether it justifies a county response. Is East Hampton putting in any money?
No, the exact purpose of this is only to protect the county road.
Okay.
We're not looking to park on
All
it.
right, well, looking at the aerials then, and I'm just going to look at the environmental impact at this point in time. Do you really want to put in sheet steel? What about, you don't think gabions or rocks such as are to the west of here are adequate? You don't think that would
We
help?
don't believe that would be adequate. And in the event of a storm such as the magnitude that happened last winter, if the road was to erode and collapse completely, I believe it would be better to have the wall installed just to prevent.
Yeah. There is other access, according to our aerials, there's other access to this parking lot. I'm just not always in favor of hardening a shoreline. Okay, yeah, there's a recognized problem here, but you have to look at the consequences. You put in riprap structures over here or steel sheeting, you're going to blow that beach out eventually. If there's another storm, there's no beach over there on the west side. It's going to be gone. That's just the way bulkheads work. If you fortify that, literally you lose 500 feet of beachfront over time, or again in a storm event. What happens is the storm comes in, hits the seawall, drops straight down, gouges out all the sand in front of it. Unless you have plans to put sand there, you're losing beach. And in this kind of an area, and I know how sensitive the East End is to environmental impacts, you're just going to end up with a riprap and steel next to a road, and it's just going to be nothing over there except that. You've lost 500 feet of beach.
If the beach were to erode.
Which I think it will do in a, whether it's a storm event or over time. I have too many examples where I live of bulkheads losing sand over time, excluding storm events, and then in storm events really losing everything. That's been a problem over the years. That's a recognized problem. Department of State, for example, is very much against hardening shorelines, even when there's a public investment in the area.
Larry?
I was going to raise that. This is clearly against the Department of State coastal zone management policies. And what have you done to get their approval?
Well, we're currently working with DEC to get a tidal wetlands permit. And
I'm talking about Department of State.
Department of State?
DEC will give you a permit to do anything these days. Department of State has a policy of not hardening shorelines, and that has to be done separate of DEC.
Oh, no, I've not contacted the Department of State.
Okay, so that would definitely need to be done.
Okay, Jim?
Yeah, I have a question. Is there any, program for sand bypass here?
Sand bypassing?
Throwing some sand over.
I mean,
To drag it out.
it's accreting on the east side, and clearly, of this system, and it's eroding on the downdrift side. As it can be seen here. Now, normally in these types of situations, if they come in a dredge, they put stuff on the downdrift side. Of course, DEC doesn't know what downdrift side, because we used to have a dredging project screening committee and said that you should put sand on the downdrift side, which is the west side, and DEC would automatically put it on the other side because I had no idea or concept of that. But technically, if you move some of the sand that's accreting on the eastern side and put it on the western side, it's going to help prevent erosion. It's not going to stop it. But I mean, if they have to do dredging projects, then in the future they should be putting the sand on the east side of the west side of the inlet.
Yeah.
I mean, is there any kind of program in place that is looking at that?
I'm not sure if there's any programs right now. I know currently the Army Corps of Engineers is dredging the inlet.
And where are they putting the sand?
They're putting it on the east side.
That's the county parks.
Well, that's ridiculous. Yeah. They could just as easy put it on the west side.
It's not that hard. I mean, I've moved pipes when I've run dredging projects and sand replenishment. I mean, you got the dredge right there. You literally, it's 500 feet of pipe, and you just literally just turn it around. It's not that hard to do. You've got mobilization already done. You've got the equipment in place. A couple of this looks like a couple of thousand yards of sand, and you eliminate the problem. This looks like, frankly, a one-time situation where you had a blowout once, and you're reacting to it, possibly in a capital-intensive way with the 500 feet of sheet piling, and it may not be in my opinion, may not be the wisest way of doing it. I'd rather see sand come over there, and it's not that hard to switch a permit.
Go ahead, Jim.
I mean that's not to say that you can't harden a shoreline or anything like that, but you then should build the beach up so that, you know, it makes sure it does work. Because as Michael said, you start hardening the shoreline, and you get another storm in there, and then it comes in there and gouges out everything, you know, and pulls more of the beach out. So the idea is you have a dual program, possibly with hardening the shoreline and then adding to the beach, so that, you know, periodically over time, so you don't get this down drift erosion, which is what's happening here.
You know, it's interesting. There's two small groins over here, and if the sand is moving from east to west, even though it's the currents are diverted by the two long jetties, theoretically, if you extended those groins, you might be able to capture some of the sand.
Well, then you move the problem down drift.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have the problem down drift, but you might be able to catch some of it over there. What it boils down to for me is I don't see this project as being a very good one. Yeah, there's public capital investment over there, but it's a parking lot. It's not as if it's giant buildings which are to the south and to the east. It's not as if there's large primary, or strike that, large private investment in the area either. It's a parking lot. I don't see the necessity for it, and I think the environmental impacts are, and that's the only thing I can judge. I just don't see it. I think there are other solutions, and I think you're creating a long-term problem. If you
I would have to agree. I think we ought to recommend that this project not go forward, or at a minimum that it go back for considerable restudy and evaluation, including actually getting perhaps some measurements of current flow, because while there's a drift of sand coming in this picture from east to west, with northwesterly winds being the prevailing winds in winter and for about 6 months of the year, there very likely is a current moving from, a literal current moving from west to east, at least in the winter months.
Yeah, but the groins mess that current up. That's why I think you have a little bit of the shadow in there.
Well, it could be. That's why I suggest that they do it. So,
well, I wasn't going to go as far as you. I was going to recommend a pause deck, but it may be send it back. Don't do a pause deck. Send it back and tell them to reconsider.
I don't think the homework has been done to allow it to.
We would need to see then the currents, sand, offshore profiles if they have them. And I'm not trying to make work for them.
Profile.
But we'd have to know.
Aerials.
Let's give them guidance on what we need to see. Historical aspects also. Again, because as I remember this area, because I have sailed out in this area, I don't remember blowouts like this, except for this, what we're seeing here. I don't remember historical aspects, 50 years ago or something like that. It'd be interesting to see the historical progression.
Yeah, that's what I was going to recommend, that you do a historical area review and look at the area in terms of, has it been continuously eroding over time? If you go back 30 years, you might see what the beach used to look like and what it looks like now, and has it been receding gradually over time with these storms?
It has been gradually receding. If you look at slide number 3, right above where, I guess, on the west side, just above where that truck is, that's the actual location of the prior road that was there. The road at one point was completely washed out.
Well, I understand that, but what I'm trying to say is there's a problem there now. But whether or not you're hardening the shoreline in here is going to really eliminate the problem. I mean, what's to stop the town parking lot going? I mean, you're protecting the county road, but what's to stop the town parking lot from going too? And maybe it should be coupled with some type of beach nourishment program with a sand bypass system. I mean, I have no idea why the Army Corps is putting it on the east side of the jetty.
I don't think that they are.
Where are they going to put it then?
I believe it's going on the west side.
So that would basically be over here then?
Absolutely, yes.
Well, we'd have to clarify that.
I think that's another point of information that needs to be...
Yeah, it needs to be obtained.
Because there's no dredge there right now, as far as I know.
Yes, there is.
There is? Okay.
They've already
And
started.
just another detail is that this is an Army Corps project, not a county project. They have jurisdiction over this inlet.
I mean, and how often is the inlet, and could the county and the town request when the inlet is maintained that it be put on the downdrift side, which appears to be eroding?
I also suggest that you go across the hall and speak to DeWitt Davies. He's done an awful lot about studying shore erosion on the north shore of Long Island, and he might actually have some historic measurements of what has gone on in this area. I can't guarantee it, but I certainly know that he's done a very extensive part of the North Shore.
He also has the aerials that we would be looking for. Larry, what do you call one of these federal harbors? This is a federal harbor where they come in. It's not a harbor of refuge. There's another word for it. Okay. I mean, that's why Army Corps has primary jurisdiction.
Okay.
Because there's a Coast Guard station right down in Highland.
That actually, that helps. I'll make a motion to table then.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, Ben, we're going to have this tabled, and we have specific pieces of information that you have to investigate and get back to us on before you bring it back to the CEQ. All right? So the list of these items are, first find out from the Department of State Coastal Management where they don't want you to harden shorelines, to discuss this concept of your project with them and see their response. Number two, talk to DeWitt Davies and get some historical shore currents, etc., and the erosion. Three, I'm trying to remember, what were the others?
Army Corps, what are they doing?
Yes, the Army Corps of Engineers for their current dredging, to facilitate a discussion with them if they can then pipe their dredging spoils onto this area. Okay, were there any others?
Elevations we'd need.
We need to see currents.
Yeah, that was currents with
okay.
DeWitt Davies.
And anything that they've got offshore. If there's any offshore profiles or anything like that, that has a bearing on things. The reason I bring that up is, again, for example, in my home community where there's sandbars, you don't have cliff blowouts or anything like that. You don't have beach erosion. Where you don't have sandbars, you have an erosion rate. So that if you have that information, it's always helpful.
So we had a motion by Michael.
Yeah.
Yes.
Second by Larry.
Did we vote? I don't think we voted.
Did you vote?
I don't think we
Okay,
will.
okay. We didn't have to technically vote. All in favor of this motion? Aye. Motion passed. Thank you, Ben. Proposed capital program 5512, safety and capacity improvements, County Road 97, Nichols Road.
Getting all these new places.
Yeah. I guess.
Yeah, it's the brakes. It's the way it is.
Pretty new.
Would they have to be taught? You're doing that.
Larry, did you want to move up?
We're going to the table then till next month.
Oh, we're going to table it till next month? Okay, very good.
Fire by fire.
Oh my God. Talk about these type 2 plans.
Morning, my name is Ron Hill. I'm principal with Dunn Engineering Associates.
I'm sorry, could you state your name again? I couldn't hear.
Hill, principal with Dunn Engineering Associates, consultants who have worked for the county on this project. The project is focused on Nichols Road, which is probably one of the most heavily traveled county-owned roadways there is. We're focused on 4 intersections just south of Route 347, Pond Path, Mark Tree Road, Wireless and Hawkins Road, and Hammond Road. This is a project to increase capacity of those intersections and improve safety. The bulk of the project is doing minor intersection widening on the side streets to gain capacity, relieve the congestion on Nichols Road, and reduce accidents that we have resulting from the congestion that we see at these intersections. The project, we did body counts and accident studies. We did a lot of simulation using computer models to look at potential solutions. And we've come up with some, again, primarily intersection related. And the first one is at Hammond Road. And primarily what we're doing is adding some sidewalks for pedestrians, pulling back the median a little bit here for a crosswalk, and rebuilding the traffic signal. There's not a capacity improvement here. It's basically rebuilding the traffic signal and adding pedestrian features to that signal. And this is the existing condition, which is, as far as lane layout, is staying the same. Again, traffic signal improvement and pedestrian. The next intersection is the most problematic, and that's where Hawkins comes across and Wireless Road intersects. And we have two signalized intersections, one operated by the town of Brookhaven and one operated by Suffolk County DPW. Our improvements in this are to change what happens at Hawkins Road southbound, and we're going to terminate the movement across. It's a low volume movement, and terminate the left turn and go with just a right turn. These movements will be accommodated. The movements we're taking away, because it's from Hawkins Avenue here, can be accommodated by getting on Nichols Road up here at Mark Tree Road. We've done origin and destination studies to gauge the impact of that, and we feel that can be readily accommodated. Now, what that does, by eliminating the northbound movement here, it allows the current intersection is operating split phase. So there's a green phase for this movement and a green phase for that movement. It's separate. By not allowing this movement to come across anymore, we eliminate a phase, and we can save time, which we then can redistribute to this movement and to the Nichols Road movement. And that's important in making this intersection more effective. We're also adding some lane capacity, so we have a double left turn lane coming off of Wireless here, and we have better flow on the Wireless Road from Nichols Road. This will make this intersection much more efficient. It will work better. We're adding a double left turn lane here on southbound Nichols Road into this intersection. And again, all aimed at making the intersection work more effectively and safely. The next intersection is Mark Tree Road. The existing condition, you have a left turn and through single left turns off of Nichols Road. And we're doing some more minor improvements here. Basically adding a double left turn lane here to accommodate the traffic. We have to do a little widening on Mark Tree between these two intersections to accommodate that double left in. This does two things for us doing the double left. It makes, because the green time allowed for a single left is longer than it will have to be for a double left. It allows us us to make this intersection operate more efficiently. The other thing it does is it provides more storage capacity.
Because they sometimes stack into.
Yeah, and that causes rear end accidents, sideswipe them. So where we need more left turn storage capacity, we're going to add it. We're rebuilding the traffic signal. The next intersection is Pond Path. And this intersection is currently operated split phase also, which is inefficient. This would be the southbound or westbound Pond Path, Nichols Road going north-south. Here you have a combined, it's a left turn and a through and a left. And here you have a left turn lane and a through. And under our proposal, we will add a lane at the intersection only so that we can do a double left turn lane from Pond Path westbound and a double left turn lane from Pond Path eastbound. Again, that will allow us to reduce the green time, add more green time to Nichols Road, and make the intersection more effective. So in widening, we are creating somewhat more pavement. The drainage for the pavement is accommodated by the existing drainage we have out there, which is recharge basins. There is some additional pickups to be put in, but we're not changing the drainage system at all. Groundwater is about 30 feet down, so we don't have any problems with groundwater. There's no wetlands in the area. None of the water flows into an open body of water. We do have there's no right-of-way taking. As you can see, when Nichols Road was taken, there was a lot of extra right-of-way taken when we took the property. So we had some room near the intersections to do the work. All the work is contained on county-owned right-of-way property. We do have one environmental issue at the intersection of Mark Cree Road and Nichols Road. In 1985, there was a threatened species of plant discovered. It's a slender pinweed. It's an herb. We can't go out and look at it until the growing season in August to spot it. We are aware of it, so we have to be careful when we do the work at Mark Tree that we take that into account. Since the Pond Path intersection is within a mile of that, we have to also be concerned there, and before we actually do any disturbance in the area around it, we also have to go out and look at it. We can't do that now because we can't see the plant, but we have been working with DEC, we've worked with Nature Conservancy before in preserving those plants, and we believe we can readily accommodate what we have to do and still not harm the plant.
Larry?
Any questions?
Around this area, I guess probably in December or so, there was a young person riding a bicycle that was killed. I'm wondering, have you considered that in your plans?
Not specifically. We do add pedestrian features to the traffic signal. Nichols Road, bicycles are really not supposed to be out there on that road. It's a limited access facility. We do have to accommodate them at the cross streets because that's mostly where you'll see that. And we'll do that to the extent we can possibly.
This is a little off the topic, but I understand that Nichols Road is a limited access road. On the other hand, there is, 10,000 more students that are going to be going to Stony Brook University in the next few years, and more of those kids are looking for jobs at the shopping center and so forth in the vicinity you're talking about, and I'm wondering if really the county shouldn't also be considering to put in some sort of pathway to accommodate bicycles, walking, and so forth parallel or along the side of Nichols Road in order to eliminate really what is becoming a major death trap at the north end of Nichols Road.
You mean north of 347 by the college?
North of 347 and going over into that shopping area where, what is it, Home Depot and what have you.
Target.
That's which leads into...
Well, it's over here on Plymouth Ave, that area.
What's south?
Just
Southeast.
Yeah.
Just southeast.
The state's improving this Wisconsin highway in there. Are they going to make any provisions for crossovers in there?
I have no idea.
All of the crossing roads are town roads, although some of them were realigned when Nichols Road was built.
When was Nichols Road built?
1950s.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't improved in the 50s.
No, it
No,
took
it's
it
just
to the
built on a
60s.
new right-of-way.
It was right around the university time. I have a map from 58 showing that it was much less of an arterial.
I'm just wondering when they made it a 4-lane road and improved it going south, too.
That was-
When was that done?
The 60s.
Was it the 60s?
And then 70s had some other stuff.
From both a traffic flow perspective and an environmental perspective in terms of energy efficiency, cars and such, is there synchronization of the lights that's happening?
Well, yes, these four signals are tied together and work in the system.
That's why I can never get out.
They are not connected directly to 347 because that's operated by the state. I believe their long-range goal was just to put an overpass.
There'll be an overpass there.
There's
Yes.
no overpass. There is an overpass.
Overpass at Nichols and 347.
It's programmed to be.
Eventually, it's in the out year.
Long way out.
Right now, it takes 2 lights to
that,
get
about
off
10
of
years?
Nichols and make the turn onto 347 out of that shopping center. But there's no nothing for pedestrians.
Any other questions, concerns? Is there a motion?
Was this unlisted?
Unlisted negative declaration, and one of the reasons that all the necessary New York State DEC approvals be obtained with respect to the threatened species.
I'll second that.
Seconded by
That's me.
Rick. Okay. Any other discussions? Okay. All in favor? Motion passed.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Okay. Proposed acquisition for open space preservation purposes known as Aspetuck Creek, C. Barnes and K. Barnes property, town of Southampton. Good morning, Loretta.
Good morning. Next two proposed acquisitions are within the Aspetuck Creek watershed. This area, unfortunately, the map doesn't show it, but it's just directly south of the West Hampton Airport, Preston Airport, on one of the main runways that goes north and south, directly along this area developed. We had identified approximately 50 acres of this area to be acquired. It has been subdivided at different times, different portions of it. As you can see on the map, the property outlined in red is the property before you.
Outlined in red?
Outlined in red.
It's this one.
Yeah, then we got a black and white
a
map.
little different shade.
Yeah.
It's that one.
It's
Okay.
the second
Okay.
southern portion.
Marion.
I got it. I got it. Okay.
It's approximately 1 acre in size, 1.36 acres. And it's adjacent to other town-owned properties that the town acquired through actually subdivision.
So we're just trying to preserve the creek?
For
This lot.
actual outright
Yeah. So we'll find
acquisition.
something between the road and people's houses.
The creek itself is situated right in the center of the property, outlined in blue if you have it. And these two properties are adjacent to those county-owned properties that include the stream corridor itself. So we're looking to acquire this property under the new drinking water protection program for passive recreational use to protect the watershed of this coastal stream that flows into Quantuck Creek to the south.
How many acres is this, Loretta?
1.36 acres.
So that would be an unlisted action?
Yes. Well, are we doing this as one or two?
No, we're still doing just the first one, but I wanted to say, Loretta, the item D, the property that's just south of this one that we also want to acquire because they butt at one border. There's two of them. Is that also going to be for the same drinking water protection program? Or?
Are you speaking about
The bottom one, the lower one.
The lower one is the one that we're looking at right now.
I thought we were first looking at the top one.
No, that's the second.
Okay. That's the second one. All right.
We're doing this?
Is that confusing?
We're doing this one and this one.
That looks
Yeah.
okay to me.
But let's, since they're both abutting one another in
Yes.
that same area, treat them as one entity right now for our descriptions and for our motion. As long as they're both under the same program to be dedicated. Are they both going to be the drinking water protection?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll just talk about them together as one and then we'll make a motion
Okay.
for both.
I'll make
The
a
other
motion.
part, if you want me to
I second.
describe the second parcel.
No, don't let her finish. This is
Trouble is, I don't have it in color. Do you have it in color?
No, but I can see which
It's a black
two.
and white vote. I'm sorry.
This one and this one.
It's up and down.
It's up and down.
Here.
See, it's this one and this one. You can see the slightly
there
different
we
gray,
go.
okay?
Yeah, this is
My poor tired old eyes, you know?
Shades of gray.
One's red, one's yellow, right?
Okay, now which one are we're talking about? The red one
First
now?
one is the red one, which is the southern one.
I don't want to waste this gentleman's time over here like we did the last time when we were voting, so,
Oh, okay.
you know, because we get paid so much money.
time of money. You know,
We get paid so much money that we wasted county time, you see? And he
You just
was
want
the
to look
only one
good in
that lost
Newsday,
everything.
Rich. That's all.
Well, he had nothing else to write about in Suffolk County.
Yeah, we're boring.
Okay, Loretta, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
First one before you is the southern one, outlined in red if you have that on your map.
Yeah.
The second one is the yellow one to the north
Yes.
of that one, outlined on the map. The parcels that are owned by the town of Southampton are outlined in purple. You might not be able to see that on the black and white, but it's an extensive area of properties
Why
to
do we
the
get black
east.
and white maps? So they're adjoining quite a bit of public
Public
property.
open space, yes.
Yeah.
And between the county and the town, we've been trying to protect this watershed.
Now, Madam Chairman, do you want to take them both together, or?
Yes, we can make a motion for both since they're
So
abutting each other in
I
the
will
same
make a
program.
motion for both.
And the motion is?
My motion is. The motion is unlisted action, neg deck.
Okay, is there a second?
There is.
Second by Mary Ann Spencer. All in favor?
We're getting punchy.
Aye.
Give this back to
Motion
Loretta.
passed.
Thank you.
Two done.
You just described it so well, Loretta. You know, that we just had to do it. I mean, you just convinced it so
Well, I'm
easily.
so glad, yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
What do I have?
there is another E.
Yes, I see that, Loretta.
The Mallinson Estate of Entenmann, we'd like to request that it be tabled at this time. The Phase 2 ESA is still in progress.
Okay.
And we'd like to wait till that's completed.
Is there a motion to table?
Table.
Yes.
Okay, second by Jim. All in favor? Aye. Motion passed.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Loretta.
Oh, God.
Okay, moving on to other business. Okay.
There is?
Of course, yes.
This one.
The other business is the
Was submitted
CEQ
prior to
bylaws.
and
We
it's-
have the draft.
It's tabled.
Yeah, but why we get black and white?
Another motion?
I would like a motion to table this because Larry wants to participate in this and he had to leave early.
Motion
for today's
table.
meeting. Mike made a motion. A second. Thank you, Rich. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Motion passed.
All right.
We're moving too fast here. Can you write fast?
We're good to go.
Okay, I officially. Oh, excuse me, Joy. Any CAC concerns?
You don't officially close the meeting. I have a question. Could we discuss either this time or next time the status of open space acquisition regarding your
That should come before us, right? 'Cause
Well, yes, we could
and regarding what is happening? Loretta left, and I just want to know because the newspapers say something different frequently, and it's 90 days. It's on hold for 6 months.
Christine went to go get Loretta.
And
But also,
do you want me to?
Kara can speak to that being on the
Can it
PTA
talk to
committee
it
when it
today, or
came up.
would you want it next time?
well, just if you could quickly, we don't in the towns, in the town of Huntington, we don't know how to proceed in terms of joint acquisitions.
Sure. I'll tell you the intent of the bill and why I've introduced it and what it says, and hopefully I'll do it quickly. I was going to just do it for a meeting, and I can talk more extensively maybe next time. But the county is transitioning at the end of November 2011. Our accelerated land acquisition program ended. The accelerated program was when we were borrowing against future revenues from our sales tax.
Right.
We brought $209 million forward, and we bought land now instead of waiting for it to come in each year, and there was the risk of losing the land. So that ended by law November 2011, and we moved to PAYGO. PAYGO being we pay with money as it comes in from the sales tax portion of the land acquisition program. Part of bonding is that you have to pay the debt service. And unfortunately, I don't have the chart here, but so now as we move from the pot of $209 million to PAYGO, I think it's in the area of 70%, it might be 75% of the money that comes in has to pay off debt service. It's in the area of, I don't want to get it wrong, I don't have the chart in front of me, 15 or 16 million a year that we have to pay debt service because we bonded and brought all the money forward. So now the money we have left to spend on land acquisitions is significantly decreased. Not because we raided the fund, not because we spent it on other things, but because we did what everybody wanted. We brought the money forward and we bought the land already. So we're going to have, it all depends on, again, it all depends on how much sales tax comes in, so it all depends on the economy. But we're going to have 4.5 million, 5.5 million the next 2 years, which, as we all know, could be one parcel, could be half of a parcel, depending on the parcel. So having talked with planning, individuals in planning, having talked with environmentalists, there's a thought that we need to prioritize what's in the pipeline. We need to prioritize what we're buying so that when we're faced with dollar amounts of 4.5 million, 5.5 million, we're sure that we're buying the most environmentally sensitive parcels. So part of that is that we wanted to know what's on the master list, what's still left on the master lists. There are a couple of them. What they're rated, because the master lists were established before we established the rating form. So if the legislature's reviewing a parcel and the parcel's rated a 24 and out of 100, and we know in the pipeline that we have parcels that are ready to move that are rated 45, 50, 60, you know, we can know maybe we should pass on the parcel that's rated a 24 and we should pick up the parcels that are rated X, Y, and Z. But if everything's not rated with the same scale, it's kind of hard to say what's in the pipeline and how environmentally sensitive is it in comparison to what we're reviewing at the time. So planning is pretty much understaffed for this task, and there's a lot of work that has to be done on planning steps, and in order for them to be able to do that, they asked for a 6-month pause, and that seemed really long time and that it could hurt the land acquisition program. So I wrote in a 3-month pause just to end, because of complaints from groups and others in the program. I also exempted anything where there was a signed, executed contract by the seller, so that those could move forward to us, so that we wouldn't delegitimize the program in any way. People who have really committed to selling and have spent a lot of money and a lot of time invested in selling to the county, instead of a quick sale to a developer, they've committed to us that will allow those to go forward with the executed contracts. So that's really the intent behind it. I hope that answers your question.
Now, what about properties that are in the process but don't have an executed contract?
Right. So those would fall, again, my bill hasn't passed yet, so they're moving forward now, but if my bill were to pass, they would pause for the 3-month time period while we're prioritizing.
Okay, so what is the timetable
on the bill?
Yes.
Again, I can't guarantee passage, but it goes to, at our next meeting in March, it'll have a public hearing, which is March 13th, I believe. There'll be a public hearing in Riverhead at the general meeting. If the public again, this is an if the public hearing closes, it then goes to our environment committee. If it's passed by the environment committee, it'll go before the full legislature at the second meeting in March. Tom, did I get that right? Yeah. Again, there's a couple of ifs there. It could not close at the public hearing in Riverhead. It could not pass out of EPA committee, but that's sort of the fastest it could happen.
Is it likely that it could get amended by another legislator, not yourself?
Well, it is my bill, so I would have to amend. It. Someone could submit a competing piece of legislation, but that would be behind in the process.
Yeah.
Now, in this process of 3 months before this bill is either passed or fails, what do we do with the partnerships, the county-town partnerships that we are proceeding with? The my town, right, is proceeding with.
Everything's, as far as I know, everything's moving forward now until...
We're moving forward as we have. So this is business as usual until something happens in the legislature. Is that right?
And again, my intent is to maximize our dollars for environmentally sensitive parcels. I want to make sure that we have a small pot of money, that we're spending it on the most important and sensitive properties, because we could buy something tomorrow that's rated low, and because right now it's first come, first serve. It's kind of like a deli counter. You get in, you take a ticket, it moves forward in the process. It comes before us land, great, we pass it, it's bought, the money's spent. But now that we have such a small pot of money, I really think we have to be looking strategically at what we're buying and whether it's finishing these creeks around the creeks or whether it's, you know, the farms, you know, which farms out east. We really need to look strategically.
Yeah, maybe when the CEQ is considering these things for neg decks and so on and so forth, a priority list would help, you know,
and
establish what we're doing, give it a little bit more credence, and you know, make it work better.
I'm also now working with the planning department, with environmental groups, on a new system for the planning steps, so that it isn't so much first come, first served. It's not fleshed out. If anyone has any ideas, I'd love to hear it. But I don't think we can move forward as is with such a limited pool of money. I think we may need to establish, almost like the farmland does, you know, a deadline. We look at parcels, maybe not once a year. I think that's too infrequently, but 3 times a year we look at parcels against each other instead of one at a time and having to say no, potentially having to say no to a lot. Whereas if we had a recommending committee, maybe that could look at all the parcels together and bring them to the recommendations to the legislature.
The Town of Huntington Open Space Committee would like to sit in on your meetings or be a participant. So
I would very much welcome your input. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm sorry if applause causes any headache. It's certainly not meant to do that. It's not meant to stop the program. I'm really trying to prioritize so we get what's most important. And maybe the discussion, maybe in this discussion there's a recognition for the need for more money.
But we don't, the problem is that we don't know what to do, and there is no clear direction coming, because I think if I may say, staff doesn't know exactly what is happening. So your recommendation is to proceed as if nothing's happening. Regular business as usual?
I wouldn't say that's my recommendation. I think I don't have any authority to stop anything now. If we pass my bill, that's the authority that the legislature takes. But, you know, I certainly think it's important to pause and to prioritize. And you know, if I had control over what's going on now, I would want things to pause. Of course,
I understand. I've been doing this kind of a long time. However, prices are at a low point right now.
I think until the legislation
though, is at
either fails or gets approved, just keep going.
If we kidnap Loretta, everything will come to a screeching halt.
And I'm sorry that I have to go, and if anybody has questions, please contact me individually. I can try to, or if I need to go somewhere and explain this to a group of people, I would do that. Thank you.
All right, is there a motion to close the meeting?
So moved.
Second? Jim seconded? Motion, aye, yes, pass, thank you.
Aye.
We don't have a quorum anymore, but we'll pass it anyway.
I went to the EPA committee meeting. I couldn't make it. So
Oh yeah, thank you
So
very
that's why I
much.
knew every detail of what she was saying. And then I read it in the paper. I was like, but they almost got it right, but I knew what it was because I was there at the meeting. No.
Did everything go
Yes.
okay? Were there any
One
curveballs?
of the legislators, I don't remember who, had asked about a property that was landlocked that we defined, and I said, if I remember correctly, I believe it is the person has access, right-of-way access to get to this property.
Oh, Montauk.
Yes,
In
in
Montauk.
Montauk.
Yes.
And he could eventually go in there and build if he
Yeah,
wanted.
if he has right away.
So then Jane, somebody from planning, said, oh, I have the papers right here. She ran up to the lectern next to me and said yes, because somebody asked, is it a paper easement or is it a something other? I don't remember the term. There were 2 different types of easements. Jane ran up and pulled out her things and discussed it, but at least I remembered it was like a legal access right of way to get to the property.
All right, so that was the only.
Yes, that was the only.
Okay, good.
Everything else went fine. I had a couple of questions, but everything was fine.
Thank you so much.
So I can plan
You
ahead.
have a thing for your leg?
Well, congratulations on your first meeting.
Very well done.
Oh, I'm so sorry. What am I supposed to say now? Oh, yeah, motion. Let's close the meeting. I said, we can't do that. I'm like, oh, yeah, motion.
Yeah, they got a hand truck back there for you.
That's what you like.
Kind of came in the middle.
I mean, so little pieces of drafts are going to come. What they can really accomplish and buy is going to be very limited based on the amount of money they got.
But I
It is a
agree
cap.
with you.
Huntington's outrage. You guys are too expensive down there.
Yeah, that's how you better vote prices.
Did you sign the? No, I didn't, but I will. Thank you.
But
The amount of that capital, this is for
One of
the
those
project
briefs,
or
one
just
quick thing.
how much is in the capital?
The Oldfield Farm
item, I believe
situation.
it's just
Larry and I were around when it happened, and Jim also. Gloria Rocchio, the leader of the Ward Melville Heritage Organization, formerly known as the Stony Brook Community Fund. That was part of her property, and they sold it off. And there were a lot of political deals that everybody was forced into. That's why you have these copper-naming restrictions and stuff like that, which I've always thought were bullshit. I always thought limiting her, whatever her name is, to 6 meetings, 6 things a year is crap. You can't survive on something like that.
What's your language in front of the
It doesn't matter, though.
But also, Ward Melville had restrictions on those properties.
Yeah, but not as much as Gloria rammed down. It's the same with Forsyth Meadows. County bought 40 acres in back of Stony Brook. Was it 40 acres or 20 acres, something like that? And Gloria wouldn't let anyone have access. She was worried that people from Smithtown might
Can I have
come
a car
down.
show there?
Yeah, she was worried that people from Smithtown might
Can I
show
have a
up
Concours
and walk in the
elegant?
walk in the woods.
But then
Okay.
now,
But it's
never
done
used
to
it
the
up for
old
today, you know?
now.
No, I want to see it opened up. I want to see it opened up. I thought
Everybody comes in with their antique cars.
and it's not like.
Gloria's not into any of this stuff. You have to understand. She operates a failing shopping center that has no proper income and no good
That's
income.
very important.
And yet she restricts everything from coming in. Stony Creek, it's off of Stony Harbor. Now it's funny with West Meadow. I control the dredging. And Larry's been studying how
Make their own
the
private
creek
preserve
itself
and all kinds of
operates.
stuff.
And I do the dredging in the area, and I won't let the sandbars get taken.
That's what it is.
So that's why it doesn't operate that way.
It is what it is.
Wherever they may
It's
be.
very micromanaged.
Deal with it as it comes along.
That's right.
Make decisions and move forward.
Well, we have the right
Oh, yeah,
there.
yeah.
Environmental sensitivities
West Shore
are
Road.
now and what are priorities.
They've been undermined.
But how,
You're talking about over by Lord Harbor, right?
You're welcome.
West Shore Road.
Tomorrow, I'll be on the phone conference for
I don't remember where it would be under.
I'll on the phone.
All along the road.
Take care.
I don't really know what the meeting
Okay.
is about.
And they had things in the permits.
List of
and
items.
then so that's
really it.
Clubs and things.
Yeah, but let's see if they have information.
Well, this is. It turns out.
It's going to collapse. Another storm, it'll collapse.
Yeah, they did one storm that dumped 700,000.
Are you supposed to be doing rating sheets for every parcel on the master
that's
list?
what it sounds like, didn't it?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That's not going to happen in 3 months. That's not going to happen.
Each town should be kicking in the deck their own car.
I'll be on the phone.
I phone conference tomorrow.
I mean, we work together on it, but I need it with
wanted her
authority.
to say, but it won't.
There was another one in Huntington
What
also,
should we do?
where they had a washout. Jim, you know West Shore Road in Huntington?
Yeah.
That's been undermined for a long time.
Sounds
Well,
good.
Before I left the town.
We just approved
I'm
that
at
project over there.
6 years, almost 7 years.
I got 2 roads like that, and all they did was raise my road up.
Nothing's happening.
They haven't done it yet? They haven't started?
There's George, he
It's
says,
like the historic trust thing, you know? It'll be 20 years before you get that. The whole road will be gone.